The Coonhound Collective podcast is brought to you by CZ Welding and Custom Dog Boxes. Dog boxes built by hunters for hunters. Check these guys out today. This is your host, Jason Snellgrove, and I will be your guide as we journey down the road to pleasure hunt or hitting the long trail to those great comp hunts. This is the Coonhound Collective podcast. Thank you for joining us today on the Coonhound Collective podcast. Today, Elijah Alexander sent me this gentleman's contact information, and we are talking with Mr. James Crosier, who has Blackjack Bluetick Kennels. Mr. James, how's it going today? Hey guys, this is Jason at the Coonhound Collective podcast. I jumped in here real quick to tell you about a raffle that we have going on. We have joined up with our partner, CZ Welding and Custom Dog Boxes, to raffle off a 24 by 20 by 38 single door top storage dog box. Nathan built a really great quality product. You can go over to the Coonhound Collective Facebook page and see pictures of this dog box. There's also ways that you can pay to get in on this raffle. There's 53 spots at $25 a spot. Now, some of those spots have already been taken up, so don't waste time. Get over there and get you a spot reserved. Now, all this money that we're raising for this dog box is going to Superior Kennel Club. That's who the monies are going through, is Superior Kennel Club, and it's going for their Youth World hunt they're having in December in Alabama. This money is going to allow Superior Kennel Club to pay more spots, first and second place. So go over right now, get you a spot reserved, help promote the future of our sport, the youth. Go over and get your spot today. Thank you.
It's going real well. Going real well.
Good.
Nice talking to you and meeting you and everything.
Yeah.
Looking forward to following this podcast.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I like to talk blue dogs. I've only ever owned one. It was a Smoky River bred dog, and there was things I liked about him, things I didn't, just like every other dog I've had. So I'm excited to hear about it, and I know there's going to be some listeners that are going to be excited to hear about it too. So won't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, that type of thing?
All right. My family is from West Virginia, Union, West Virginia, and my particular branch of it migrated to North Carolina probably in the early 70s. My father was in the military and he was killed, and my mother moved to North Carolina because that's where her father was. And she had 6 kids, so we needed Grandpa's help to kind of keep everybody straight.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Sometimes you need that, and sorry to hear about that about your dad. So, but good thing you had a mentor there to kind of oversee you and help you along the way.
That's right, and he worked out perfectly and meant a lot to me. I was the oldest, so he gave me a lot of guidance that I needed. And he was also, even though he was a minister, Methodist preacher, he also would be considered a sporting man. He liked to hunt and he liked to fish, but there won't none of this catch and release stuff that you see today. You know, he was from the old school where you caught it, took it home, and eat it.
Yeah. Me and my son joke, and he's got some buddies he fishes with, and I said, well, how many did y'all get? And he said, well, I don't know, they were throwing them back. I said, what do you mean they were throwing them back?
Exactly. Yeah.
Well, won't you tell us how you got into, I guess, maybe coon hunting to start with, or tree dogs, how you got involved with hounds?
My brother-in-law, Danny Gray was his name, from Snow Hill, and he somehow we had hunted together for several years after we became related, and we were about the same age, and which was like 18 at the time. And he came home one day with a blue female grade dog that about the only talent she had was she'd put her front feet on the tailgate and hold her tail up where you could pick her up by the tail and she'd run in the dog box. That was about the best thing she could do. And there was an old dog trader in Snow Hill at that time named Mr. Dave Corbett. And he had picked her up for Mr. Dave for $25. Well, that doesn't sound like much now, but back in the 73, and we were 18 years old and just out of school, that was a lot for us to have to deal with, and then for the dog not to be no count. But we became good friends with Mr. Corbett, and he started looking out for us, and he took the old blue dog back in on a trade and gave us a couple of young registered dogs that one of them influenced me quite a bit. My brother-in-law never did get to the point where he really wanted to hunt blue dogs. He was satisfied going with me and mine, but he had red bones for a while, and then he got some plots. But he always managed to have a dog that would tree a coon. So we were both competitive, and at the same time, we're able to hunt together. But those early years were tough, even with a good breeded dog. Like I know now just how well bred my dog was, but she was young, and we hunted the first year. And I tell this story. I've heard other people tell similar stories. Craig Edwards told one not too long ago. He's from North Carolina. We hunted the first year 6 nights a week and never saw a coon. Never saw a tree, actually. We would get in there and we'd turn the dogs loose and they would jump and they would run. And 2 hours later, we'd catch them up the other end of the woods. And we didn't have enough intelligence at that time to realize they were running foxes. So there was no wonder we never got to see any trees, but we had some pretty good fox dogs, I guess. And we took that round of dogs back to Mr. Dave and upgraded again. And this is when it started getting a little more serious. He had a male dog that was a puppy from what became my mentor, Mr. Buddy Ginn in Snow Hill. Buddy bought a female from Johnny Watson. And Johnny and Elbert Vaughn were real good friends. And he took one of Elbert's females and bred it to Vaughn's Blue Mac. And when he bred that the first time, he bred it to a Diamond Jim dog. Not Diamond Jim himself, but a direct son. And he had like 8 or 9 puppies. And my first real good dog came out of that particular litter. And but I like to tell the story of that was Bluetick royalty back in the 70s. A female directly out of Blue Mac, bred to a son of Diamond Jim, that came right straight from Warren Hassler and Smoky River. You would have just thought you would have had some picture perfect blue dogs, but that was not the case. We had 3 or 4 that looked like Mac, and 1 or 2 all blue ones, 1 or 2 black and white ones, 1 or 2 liver colored ones. And I'm not sure what the oddball, if you could call it an oddball, but there was one that didn't look like none of them. And Buddy Ginn not only had the female and he was raising the puppies, but he was a Bluetick scholar. And he would sit me down in his kitchen and we would pull out the 7-generation pedigrees he had. He was about 15 years older than I was. And he had been in it for about 15 or 20 years. And he had studied those Bluetick papers and the 7-generation papers that back in the 70s went back to the 50s. And he showed me how to match the numbers and tell which dogs were litter mates. And he would try to explain to me why he thought some of the crosses were so outstanding. and he was definitely a Vaughn man. You know, back then, Dave Dean and Hammer Dogs were just getting started good, but people were liking a lot of his stuff. And of course, you had Albert Vaughn, but Julius Sebastian. You know, some of the older guys had their own following, and so I naturally kind of migrated to being a Vaughn guy too. And especially once my dogs started doing so well, those dogs made really outstanding tree dogs. And most of them were cold nosed that you hardly ever saw. I never heard of a dog in the 70s that ran with his head up, but a lot of those off the Diamond Jim Cross could. And they could smoke a track, boy. The
Now, was y'all just pleasure hunting these dogs, or were you already involved in competition at that time?
No, I was learning how to hunt and learning how to train a dog, and Buddy was strictly a pleasure hunter.
Okay.
Matter of fact, by the time I got to know him, he didn't even hunt at night anymore. There was a big old pine woods precaution that was not too far from the house that it was just huge and nothing in it but pine trees. And he would get up just before daybreak and turn the dog loose in that pine wood precaution. And we would spend a couple of hours uh, letting the dogs work in there till one of them treed. And then we would go in there, and I have not seen this done much since then. But this guy was just amazing. He, when Misty would tree, that was the Vaughn's Mac female. When she would tree, we'd get in there to her. He'd say, "Now tie all the dogs back about 15 yards," and he would take his axe and reach up about as high as he could and slam that tree with his axe, the blunt side of it, 4 or 5 times, just rattled the tree. And he'd say, "Now take that handful of reeds there and shake those reeds and rub them up against the tree." And he got back and started blowing the squaller. And every single time we made a tree like that, at least one coon would come out. I mean, just come sailing out. We would give that coon a 15 or 20-second head start. It was so thick that they didn't need much. And we turned the young dogs out first, see what they could do with it. If they did, that was fine. If they didn't, then we turned the older dog out, and she'd straighten it out for them, and they'd go off. And sometimes we'd run that coon 2 hours before we would tree it again. And that's how he hunted every Saturday morning. Walked me to death. And but I learned so much from him and I didn't even realize it at the time, but he was a Christian man, and he was teaching me not only how to coon hunt, but how to be a man and a father and all these kind of things that a good mentor would teach you. And we just lost him about 2 weeks ago. He was 82, and he treated his last coon this past January. So he was in it to the very end, which I just, every time I think about it, I smile.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's how I think every coon hunter wants to go out, is in good health, still being able to go to the tree. But sounds like what a man, what a legacy he's left behind to just from what you're telling me about him. Unfortunately, I didn't get to meet him or get to know him, but that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he was the captain of the local prison, and so he was very regimented and very disciplined and all of that. But he cared genuinely for young people, and like I said, he went out of his way to encourage me and to help me do the best job I could do with the dogs that I had. And it didn't take me too long to figure out I needed to kind of match my dogs with his bloodline wise, and I did that. The second time that we bred that Vaughn's Mac female, her name was Misty. We carried her to Bowie's Creek and bred her to Harry Ennis's Snow. And Snow, even though he died very young, he really left his mark in the Bluetick world. He was the father of such dogs as the original Solid Rock dog and the Hornblower dog. And, there's probably 8 or 10 that were born about that same time that were just fantastic coon dogs. And we bred her to Snow and had 8 puppies, and they were all colored exactly like they should be. So that let us know that the color that we were getting before wasn't all Misty's fault. There were some other things going on there, but we got 7 or 8 puppies, and I ended up keeping a female that we called Penny, and she was pretty much the spitting image of her mother, and a little bit smaller dog, but good mouth, good nose, quick locator. Didn't back in those days, it was not uncommon for most people to have a dog 3 years before it would ever treat a coon. They would say, well, the first year you get it and let it grow up. The second year you get it started, and the third year you make a coon dog out of it if it's going to. Penny wasn't like that. Penny, by the time she was 7, 8 months old, was a tree dog. And that was just unheard of in those days. Matter of fact, having a tree dog was almost unheard of in those days. Some of the guys had something that would tree and stay there, but most of the dogs in those days were track dogs that occasionally would tree. So we were hunting just a whole different kind of dog than most people had. And this same period, Buddy introduced me to one of Albert Vaughn's relatives. He stayed in North Carolina up in the mountains. His name was Sherman Butler, and he's in some of the early blue books. Sherman was a Bluetick breeder, much the same as Albert Vaughn. He just didn't, he never acquired the notoriety that Albert did. He didn't have as many dogs, but he produced a lot of dogs up there, and he's the one that actually made the cross that produced the original Solid Rock dog. So he was always on the lookout for a nice male dog to breed. He was the type that would keep 8 or 10 well-bred females and then drive all over the countryside when they came in heat to breed them to something that was exceptional. And one of the last crosses he made before he died, he took a female. Matter of fact, it was a female off of the Misty and Snow cross. And took her and bred her to Charlie Bray's Clipper, who was out of Tashuta-Zarkey. And that produced some firecrackers, a little bit grouchy around the tree, but they were firecrackers. I mean, they would hit a track and just take off scalding it. You would think they were running a deer, but didn't have too much trash problem with those dogs. They were, like I said, every dog's got some kind of an issue. They were just a little grouchy. And from what I had been told, the stories I've been told, I didn't hear this myself. I didn't see it myself, but Clipper had been in several dog fights. He made night champion, but then I think they kind of encouraged him to quit competition hunting him. So that's how those things go sometimes. You know that. Nowadays, they just ban you. But back in those days, they kind of worked with you a little bit, I think. Anyway, the last time that we bred Misty, we bred her 3 times. The third time that we bred her was to one of Sherman Butler's dogs that was a son of Hills Rock. So once again, you're dipping into that old bloodline that not too many people had hold of, but he was a big dog. He weighed about 110 pounds. And the reason Buddy wanted to breed to him was his mouth was so exceptional, as well as the fact he was a tree dog. He was a little bit, well, he was a whole lot slow, but he would tree a coon. He was accurate about 90% of the time. And he just had a mouth that you could just hear over most dogs all the time, whether he was trailing or treeing. And I ended up with a male puppy out of that cross that was a little bit too tree minded when he was young. He started treeing with the other dogs when he was about 9 or 10 months old. He could just blow the top out of the tree like his daddy. But it took him about 2.5 years to learn how to check his tree, and probably would have happened sooner if I'd have hunted him by himself. But we always had 5 or 6 dogs we felt like needed to go, so we would throw them out there and let them roll. And I spent 30 years hunting pretty much with the same 2 guys, either my brother-in-law, the first part of that, or a gentleman from Farmville, North Carolina, which is not far from where I stay now. And he was a walker man. And but we hunted together every night. One night he would drive, the next night I would drive. And he hunted the Riverbend flag dogs. So most nights we could go out there and get something stirred up. And this was back in the time when coon prices were pretty high. We could go out, get in the woods by 8 o'clock, hunt till 11, tree 4 coons, next day sell them for $100. And being young, and in my case, I had a young family by that time, that $100 a night was pretty good money for us. So it gave you a little bit of extra incentive. But the one thing that I had always promised myself, I was a biologist at East Carolina University, retired about 10 years ago, is I would never let the coon hunting get me to the point where I would stay out of work the next day. And I never did. I'd get up no matter how bad I felt and go to work. But it would be easy to do, I could see, especially if people had to work swing shifts or something like that. It would be kind of tough to stay out till 3 or 4 in the morning and then get up and have to go to work. But the guy that I was hunting with, as I said, was a walker man. And when we first started hunting Penny, I really wasn't paying her that much attention. She was a young dog. She was kind of flighty. She looked good for a while. Then she'd quieten up. And I started paying attention to my hunting partner, Anthony. And I said, Anthony, what are those dogs doing? He said, I don't know what the other dog's doing, but Penny's been treed 10 minutes. He said, I've been waiting on her. I said, is that what we've been doing all this time? He said, yeah. He said, I ain't never going in the woods until she trees. So that was kind of made you feel good that you knew something was happening that other people were noticing. And I've managed to carry a lot of that bloodline all through the years, even to what we've got now. I've got an all blue female out there now that's 8 or 9 years old that is all blue, just like those original ones were off the Diamond Gem cross. And she's about half crazy, but mostly in a good way.
Well, but before we move on, I want to talk to you a little bit about breeding. You was talking about the gentleman sitting down with you, going through pedigrees and stuff like that. What was he teaching you, like, as far as breeding? Was y'all looking for dogs back in that pedigree to cross back into that female to carry a line on, or was y'all looking for different traits to bring in?
Different traits to bring in, mostly because a lot of those dogs were probably dead. But he was trying to show the continuity that Elbert Vaughn had over the years he had developed. And if you've read any of the stories about Elbert Vaughn, one of his quotes that I remember so well is the best cross he had ever seen was a granddaddy cross, where he took a dog and bred her to her granddaddy. And if they were both exceptional dogs, the puppies would be better than either one of them. And we keyed on that quite a bit. And another thing that I picked up from all of that was Albert would he would tell us, he would say, look, you ain't, remember back in the early 70s, not everybody had tree dogs. So we were always concerned about making sure we were breeding tree dogs. He would say, no, that's not right. These dogs are going to tree. You don't have to worry about that. He said, I always look for the dog that can cold trail and move a track the right way. That was more important to him than a dog that would tree. And so these little pieces of information that you kind of pick up along the way, they kind of, I call it like building a pyramid. You start off laying your foundation, and then you get the next row of bricks, and you keep going up as you learn. And we were still tied up with Mr. Corbett at that time, and Dave had a little bit of money, and I guess he was probably 70 years old by the time I met him, but he could still get around in the daytime, and he liked the Blue Dogs. He ordered a young male dog from Hoy Biscamp out of Texas. His name was Jocko, and he brought it there, and Jocko was a 00 Grant bred dog, and he was 4 years old, all blue, and when he hit the tree, he would throw his head back and have a long, dying, quivering bawl. Well, we never had a dog that would do that. And he was super accurate, super cold-nosed, and we bought that dog from him, which gave us a link to Hoy Biscamp, and Hoy had some outstanding dogs. He had been hunting the larger dogs, his Smoky dog, which was 00 Grant, and he just was, he liked the dogs he was producing. Everybody else did too, but they were big dogs, and they didn't sell that well. Hoy would, he said, I'd raise a litter of puppies, have 8 or 10 puppies out there, might sell 1 or 2, end up having to give the rest of them away. And at that time, I don't know why he switched, other than the fact that he just needed to do something, felt like he needed to do something different. But that's when he got the Rowdy dogs. And we ended up getting a couple of puppies from him off the Rowdy. He crossed the Rowdy off the Smoky females. And they produced dogs that were louder, heavier chopped, loud, carrying voices, that we went to the fall roundup one day and we heard a young dog, probably 6 months old, at the other end of the place. He was just drowning 300 dogs out. We got back over there to see what it was, and it was a puppy off a Rowdy that was about 6 months old. He was just drowning everybody out. And we carried a couple of those puppies home, and they brought a whole new element to what we were trying to do. Not only did they not hurt the tree power, but they added some voice there that just was unbelievable. And boys around home, they hunted those dogs for 30 years. And everybody, they would kind of know when we were getting ready to breed or something had come into heat and we had bred it. And whenever we had puppies available, they never lasted more than a day. Actually, they still don't. But, I was just young at the time. And do you know Dave Sellers from Ohio?
I know the name, but no, I don't know.
Okay. He's my age, and he probably knows more about blue dogs than I do, if you want to know the truth. And he says all the time that the Blackjack Bluetick Kennel is one of the best kept secrets in the coonhound world. Being from North Carolina, we just don't have the amount of hunters that coon hunt, especially now since there's no value to any of the pelts. All those people that kept dogs back in the 70s and 80s, they were trying to make a few dollars off of selling pelts. But that doesn't exist anymore here. So we lost probably 70% of our coon hunters. And so that makes it kind of hard sometimes trying to get a good, well-bred puppy into the right hands. Because I always like to get 2 or 3 into somebody's hands that would promise me they would competition hunt it, even if I had to cut the price and or give it away. I would. I always thought that was important. It gave me a measuring stick because, especially with young boys, if the puppy took off and started doing real well, and particularly if it started winning a hunt or two, you could kind of figure out that was the right kind of cross. And by the same token, if they had hunted it and it wasn't doing as well, they would tell you about it. So stuff like that helped me make the kennel I've got today what it is, because I always paid attention to the hunter. I always made sure I put them out there to them. I sell a lot of dogs to people that aren't interested in competition hunting, and that's fine. Not everybody wants to do that, but everybody likes a tree dog. And I sold a puppy just the other day to a guy, came all the way from Tennessee, and he picked up a pair of them. And he said, I'm really looking forward to giving these guys a chance. And I said, well, I think this is a proven cross. I think you'll be happy with them. He said, yeah. He said, I checked you out really well. He said, about the only thing that I found that could be considered negative is that your dogs treat too hard. I laughed. I said, I'll take that.
Yeah, going from not having dogs to tree very very much or very often to having them tree too hard. Yeah, that's okay there.
Yeah, I'd take that one every day. But I retired about 10 years ago, and that allowed me to expand what I'd been wanting to do my whole life. But, having to work and raise kids and all of that, you have to set limitations. And now that I'm retired and my kids are grown, and all I have to do is make sure my wife stays relatively happy. The rest of it, I'm on my own out there, and I spend all day out there a lot of times, and uh, it's given me a lot of enjoyment in retirement that I had not even considered. I had other things that interested me, but being able to work in that kennel and design it and change it and fix it exactly the way I wanted to. And then I got lucky because I'm getting a little up in years now myself. I'll be 67 in September, the 17th. And I've found a couple of younger guys that wanted to handle some stud dogs for me in the hunts. And we did real well the last couple of years. We put Grand Night Champion titles on 4 dogs. And these dogs were born and bred here. So that always makes you feel better when I tell people all the time, we hunt what we breed. It's not that I won't go out and pay for somebody else's bloodline. I do that sometimes if I think that it'll work and help me out somehow. But, we hunt what we breed. And I wish a lot more of the guys that are raising dogs would do some of that. I think our dogs would continue to improve. They're certainly a lot better than they were 40 years ago.
Yeah, I started with a black dog, and kind of the story you were telling there about 3 or 4 years old before they would really do what they were supposed to do. That's kind of the same mentality that, I was taught with, is don't be in a hurry, don't be impatient, and, just stick with it and give it time, it'll work out. But,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, I had a Bluetick, one before, and he was a Smoky River bred, top and bottom, good looking dog. Unfortunately, before I got him, he was allowed to bark his mouth out some, and so he wasn't quite as loud as you needed one to be, especially if you were going to try to competition hunt one. But
Right.
I really like the whole breeding thing. I'm not a breeder. I've done some breeding, but I'm not a breeder. And I like to look at pedigrees, and I like to think about, will this cross well with this? And that whole breeding aspect of it is, very intriguing to me. And those older guys, they figured it out because, like you said, they had dogs that wouldn't tree at all, dogs that would tree some, and then they figured out what they needed to do to get dogs to tree like they were supposed to. And I just always
Exactly.
thought that was very interesting because somebody spent some time, just like your mentor there, going through pedigrees and looking at papers and figuring out what needs to be bred to what.
Exactly right. And I wish there was some way that we could acknowledge those people. Uh, Sherman Butler, he put a lifetime in it. Buddy Ginn certainly did. Uh, and they were just blue tick men through and through. But, for the most part, unless you happen to have been a member of the BBCHA, which I have been for a long time, you probably never seen the name Sherman Butler. He was in some of the earlier magazines. As I said, he died pretty early on, 77, 78, something like that, I think. So a lot of these young boys now, they probably have never heard of any of the dogs I've been talking about for the last 10 minutes, Uh, and another thing that is challenging for me as a breeder now is I can pretty much breed to whatever I want to. If I see a really nice female that I think will help me, I can buy her. But a lot of these guys will young guys, I'm saying, they'll want to know how many titles that dog's got. And I try to talk to them. It's not always about the titles. It's about the dogs that can produce winners. And sometimes I think we get a little bit sidetracked with the competition stuff. I like it. I like being in it. I like being a part of it. I've never personally had any problems, although from what I've been hearing on some of these things on Facebook, there's a lot of problems out there.
Well,
But
I've got a podcast coming out in not this Thursday. My podcast releases every Thursday, not this Thursday, but next Thursday. And there's going to be a
right,
story in there that happened to a guy at Autumn Oaks. And while there are systems and procedures in place to question calls out in the field, that's what happened. He questioned a call. Went into the master of hounds. The call still wasn't corrected. He requested a panel, went before a panel, had evidence to go before the panel, and the call was overturned. I think Facebook, social media, kind of has blown this out of proportion with people cheating. A lot of that is they don't know the rules. They don't know how to apply the
that's
rules in the right way. And I'm not speaking ill against anybody. I'm as guilty as anybody. I'm fixing to get ready to go hunt my dog in the zones for the UKC World. And you know what I'm doing? I'm reading and brushing up on rules and trying to remember
exactly
that. And that's what we all have to
exactly
do to make ourselves better.
that's exactly right. And a lot of times, a lot of the problems that are caused during some of these hunts are because some of these guys just don't know the rules. They change periodically. They're adjusted. They you gotta get it out and look at it every year.
Yeah, for sure. And just like at Autumn Oaks, they voted on some new rules, some new rule changes that's going to be taking place. And we're all going to have to, get the book back out and brush up and learn what those are and adjust our hunting strategy to accommodate those and move on. You just got to stay on top of it. It's kind of, the way I look at these rules, there's different rules for different registries, and they're all kind of the same, but a little bit different. But it's also just like it goes back to this breeding. Those old men, they knew what it took I need to breed this dog with this dog to make what I want. Well, they were studying those pedigrees, those dogs. They were talking to people. It's no different than us getting prepared for a hunt. Whatever registry you're hunting for, you got to study the rules, know the rules, and know how to apply them to your situations.
Exactly. Yep.
Well, won't you go ahead and bring us up to today? I was looking through your Facebook page, and you got a little bit different looking dog there. I think her name is Sky, that I seen on your Facebook page. There,
Yes.
What's she at?
She's the half crazy one.
Okay.
She's one of the ones that goes back to the original Diamond Jim Cross.
Well, I got a good friend, and we become friends because of this.
You're talking about Blue Eyes. Is it Sky or Shy?
Let me look here again. It is.
What color is the dog?
Just about white with a blue eye.
Yeah.
Shy.
No, that's not my dogs. A good friend of mine here in North Carolina, he has had the junkyard dogs. Chris Cornell is his name. And Chris bred that. She's a year old. He bred that dog. He bred that litter of puppies that produced one dog that looked like her. All the rest of them looked normal. And he kept it. And about 2 months ago or 3 months ago, I got to talking to him, and he said, you ought to take this white dog and see if she'll suit you. He said she's got a lot of Spanky in her. And I've been a follower of Spanky for a long time, just like a lot of the guys have. And she is loaded with it. And that's one reason why she was off colored, is they kept going back to the Spanky dogs and going back to the Spanky dogs. And the junkyard dogs are full of it. And they make good dogs too. Chris he's been hunting those dogs for 20 years, and they've made good dogs, and they've made dogs that would win. And I said, yeah. I said, I'll take her. I said, I like the Spanky dogs, but she is, if you're a real Bluetick man, she's kind of hard to look at.
Well, I've got a good buddy. We become friends because of this podcast, Brett Stevens, and I'm sure he'll tell you I'm the first to jump on the weird looking dog. So like to me, she's beautiful. I like the way she looks. I mean, like, I've seen, and I think I was scrolling through your Facebook and seen some liver colored dogs, and those things that come out different always intrigue me. I had a female here, a red tick English female, had a litter of puppies, and when it was the guy that I bought her from had bred her prior to me getting her, and the first puppy that was born, when it was born, I picked the phone up and I called him and I said, I thought you bred this dog to a red tick English male. And he said, I did. Why? I said, because I just had a walker dog. And every dog after her was a red tick English, but she come out tricolor. And,
that's right.
Yeah. And so I was scrolling through there and I seen that, and I was like, man, to me, that's a good looking dog, but I'm not a diehard blue tick guy. I like the blue color. I've got some blue English dog here at the house, and I like that blue color, but I really like those oddball looking ones too.
She's about as odd as they get.
Yeah.
Have you seen my website?
No, I didn't see a website. I was on your Facebook page scrolling through. That's where I seen her, and then looks like
there's a few pictures.
A liver colored dog on a tree there treeing too.
That's right. That's a Reef. He made night champion in about, I don't know, 6 hunts. Didn't take him long. Now that's another thing that I think is helping everybody is instead of 1 4-hour hunt or 3-hour hunt, they hunt twice a night now. Some of the clubs do. And so if you've got a really good dog and are in a position where you can make both hunts, you can make a dog a night champion, in half the time it used to take.
Yeah, for sure. We have several clubs around here that hunt double headers, UKC, and then of course we have quite a few PKC clubs around here that hunt double headers too.
Yeah. On my website, I want you to look at it sometime tonight or when you get a chance, is www.blackjackbluetick.com. And I don't manage it, pay somebody to manage it, but it's got a lot of our dogs from back the last 35, 40 years. So to give you some chance to just look at some pictures.
Yeah, I'll see if I can. I don't know if I can do it when we're on the phone, but I'll see if I can get it pulled up here and take a look at it for sure. I always enjoy looking at pictures of dogs. That's that's what it's about for me. Is I like seeing good dog work. I like seeing good looking dogs, and I'm guilty of liking the odd looking dog for sure.
And I like to see dogs that reproduce their likeness or their ability or better. That's really what you're striving for. You don't want to breed 2 dogs and end up with something that's not any better than the parents. Every time you make a cross, you're striving to become better than either one of the parents. And that's another thing I think gets lost sometimes. A lot of times people breed them and hope for the best. And if you do your homework and you have a little bit of knowledge, not only about the bloodlines, but have a real understanding of what your dog is capable of doing. And a lot of people, he might tell you, yeah, my dog will tree a coon, he's broke. Okay, he'll tree a coon. What else will he do? Is he trashy? Did it take him 4 years before he treated his first coon? Does he have a good mouth? Is he mean? There's a whole lot of things, a lot of things to check off there besides just treeing a coon. People come up to the kennel, they say, how can you hunt all those dogs? And I said, first of all, I've got 2 handlers helping me with the ones that are in competition. I said, second of all, the last thing I particularly want to do is go out and tree a coon. Most of the time when I'm hunting, especially right here around the house, I'm carrying a young dog, 6 or 7 months old, that's just started going and he's getting better every night, but he hadn't quite put it together. That night that he puts it together and he gets up on that tree and he blows the top out of it, that's what I'm hunting for now. I have seen so many coons and so many trees, that part of it doesn't excite me anymore. But to see that young 6 or 7 month old dog get better every night and put his feet up on the tree and blow the top out of it, and you shine the light up there and the coon's there, that's the time that I get excited. And a lot of these guys don't understand it. Why don't you want to treat a coon? It's not always about treating the coon. It's about watching your dogs progress and grow. And you brought them into this world. It's time to see what you have done. You're putting your own report card has got to be filled out as a breeder. Because if you keep taking that guy and he's not getting any better, then you need to check on your report card. I missed this one. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And it's hard for some guys to do that.
Are you tired of whipping, scolding, and shocking to make them get alone? Is your buddy tired of helping you set your dog up for correction night after night? Do you really want your dog to be alone because you forced him to be? Or would you rather him be alone because he wants to be? Grand Night Champion Small Town Lone Survivor is the product of over 25 years of strong natural-born independent traits. This bold trait has been passed down from generation to generation and is showing up in loner offspring today. Loner is a direct son of Hall of Fame Grand Night champion Cabin Creek Rowdy and Grand Night champion Lonesome Dove Lori. Loner has a booming mouth that is talked about in every cast he has been in, including the 2021 World Hunt Finals. Loner is a no-reverse, ball-mouth open trailer who ends it plussed up with a huge dying locate and steady chop. Loner loves getting split and is a stay-put gun-pressure tree dog. Loner's intelligence is also impressive. He knows over 12 voice and hand signal commands. Loner has a character that loves like Jesus, but he doesn't walk on water. If you're interested in breeding to Loner, contact Brett Stevens at Small Town English Kennels at 417-300-3777 or find him on Facebook.
If you're interested in running a stud ad for your dog here on the Coonhound Collective podcast, reach out to us at thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. Send us a message through Facebook or Instagram, and we'll be glad to get with you to get you an ad built and get you pricing on all of our ads. Yes, sir. And, you know, for me, like I said, I'm not a breeder. I've bred a couple of litters, but I wouldn't consider myself a breeder per se. But when I get a young dog here, you know, at the house in my kennel, you know, before I ever take the dog hunting, I'm looking for brains. I have to have a dog that has some sense to be around me. I know some people like them crazy and wild and stuff like that, but I know my temperament and I know me, and I can't handle a dog like that. I've got to have a dog that'll listen to me, that's got some sense, that you know is pretty smart. And I'm looking for those things, and I'm challenging that young dog here at the house in the yard just to test those things and see if this dog's going to pass muster to even make it to the woods for me.
Exactly. You're absolutely right. That first 3 or 4 months that they're alive, that's where you figure out if they've got brains or not. And they don't all have them. I mean, even the well-bred ones. You get some idiots in there sometimes that just nobody could do anything with. And, you know, any good breeder that I have ever known in my life, and I have known several of them, one of the first things they tell you is if you can't make yourself call and call hard, you have no business trying to be a breeder. And yeah, I know all these animal rights people are going to say, oh, my God, let's go string that guy up. You know, I'm sorry, but you don't need to be reproducing dogs that don't satisfy the standard, don't satisfy the breed, they don't satisfy you. Why are they going to satisfy anybody else? You know, those are the ones that just as soon as you can recognize that they need to be culled, go ahead and cull them. And you can take them to the vet and have them put to sleep. You know, there's a number of ways to do it humanely. And so I want to make sure I always throw that in there. It's one of the things that you can do as a responsible breeder to help the breed continue to get better.
Yeah. And, you know, nowadays there's people wanting dogs as pets, have the dog fixed where it can't be bred and give it to somebody, if nothing else, you know, if you can't cull any other way. And I got on your website, and I'm fixing to completely derail a coon hunting podcast because I have seen mountain cur squirrel dogs on your website. So I've got to know, I just got a squirrel dog puppy here at the house, my first squirrel dog ever. Never had one before. I've always had hounds.
Right.
Talk to me about these squirrel dogs and how you got over in the squirrel dogs. Hey guys, this is Jason over at the Coonhound Collective podcast. Is your dog box starting to get wore? Maybe it's starting to get a little cracked like mine is. Maybe you've just been thinking about it's time to upgrade to a new box, but you've asked your buddies and you're just not real sure what direction to go in. Well, let me help you out here. Go check my friends out at CZ Welding and Fabrication Custom Dog Boxes and Aluminum Products on Facebook. You can check out all their custom work they do there and their designs that they do. If you don't see something that you don't exactly like there, reach out to Nathan at 540-810-5439, 540-810-5439, or send him a message through the Facebook page. I bet he can fix you up. Don't wait till fall to get that new dog box. Go ahead, get that dog box now. Get you something looking good in the back of your truck that you can be proud of and that you can haul your dog around in comfort. Check my friends out at CZ Welding and Fabrication. You won't go wrong. Dog boxes built by hunters for hunters. Get yours today. CZ Welding and Fabrication.
Well, as I told you, I'm getting on up in age, and I don't know how many more years my wife's going to let me go out there at night and trample through the swamp. So and she's still working. She's younger than I am, and she's still working. So I said, a squirrel dog's kind of like a coon dog. They tree. And I was trying to talk myself into it. And for the last 7 or 8 years, I have been kind of plowing through the mountain cur registry, watching these guys that are making these dogs and making them, they have the competition hunts for the mountain curs, just like they do everything else. And there's a guy not too far from me. We became real good friends. And he kind of did it backwards from me. He had the mountain curs first, and then he got some blue dogs. Whereas I had the blue dogs all my life, and I decided that I wanted to do the mountain curs. And I got to grade mountain curs 4 or 5 years ago, and they were brothers, and they would tree every squirrel in the woods. They'd half kill each other every time you turned them out. I didn't like that. But that kind of happens with the mountain curs from what I can tell myself, the ones I have seen. They tend to be a little bit grouchy, even with their own relatives. But I decided to raise some puppies off of them because I had 2 or 3 people that were interested in them. And I couldn't hardly give them away because they weren't registered. Okay, I learned a lesson here. Not only do you have to have a good mountain cur, but you need to have one registered if you're going to raise any puppies. So I sold those and decided, I said, all right, let's find out what we think is the best out there right now as far as what they're reproducing. And I decided on the 2020 Hummer dogs. Well, even though they've been out for a number of years, you just can't pick up the phone and call somebody and buy one. There's just not that many of them out there. But I eventually got to the point where I found a really nice male dog directly out of 2020 Hummer, and he was a squirrel treeing machine. The boy had him that trained him, wanted to competition hunt him, and he didn't have quite enough go to competition hunt. He would go about 600 yards and come back to you. That's just not enough for those guys that hunt the big time. And but it was perfect for me. And we went. I've got a place behind my house that has never been logged, and nobody coon hunts it or squirrel hunts it. A couple of young boys deer hunt it, but it's about 600 acres of old timber. And I keep corn out there where the coons and the squirrels can get to it, but the deer can't. Nearby year round. So I've got a lot of squirrels back there. And I took that young male when I first got him, and we hunted about an hour and a half, and he made 60 trees. And I told a friend of mine about that, and he said, well, he knew what that place was behind my house. He said, that's kind of like shooting fish in a barrel. I said, yeah, I won't argue that. There's a lot of squirrels back there. I said, but he still had to find them and tree them. And I said, that was just astounding to me. And there's a boy in Ohio, Kennels, that we got a couple of well-bred females from. And we had that coming along really nicely, I thought, and people were interested in them, and had a couple of people come and breed to the dog I had. And I had a guy from Virginia come up here about the first of spring this past year, and he bought every cur I had, and I didn't want to sell them. You know, sometimes as owning a working kennel, you sometimes have to do things that you don't want to do, but when that happens, you can rest assured that I put a price on them that would have scared most people, but it didn't scare him. He pulled out the money and paid me, and then talked junk to me. You know.
Well, I'm looking here at the website, and I know zero when it comes to squirrel dogs and pedigrees and stuff like that. I won mine in a raffle that they were having to raise money for a youth event, and it's NKC registered. I don't even have his papers back yet. I got him with puppy papers, and
Gotcha.
he looks just like this little bit dog here on your website, Blackjack 2020 Buster's Little Bit. He's that color, and he's almost got a blue haze all over him. And supposedly he's registered as a Feist, but supposedly his granddad was this Hummer 2020 dog and a Barger Feist female.
Oh my!
But that's all I know.
Right. Well, if he's got some 2020 Hummer in him, and it's as close as his granddaddy, I'm pretty sure that whatever females they were breeding them to would at least tree squirrels. You're not going to waste the 2020 Hummer stud fee on something that won't tree a squirrel. So you might have a diamond in the rough.
Yeah, and like I said, it could be his great granddad. I don't know. I don't have the generation pedigree back, but supposedly that was the breeding in there. He's brindle, kind of a light brindle like that little bit dog there is. Actually, I have a pair of them here. I have a male and a female. The female is supposed to go to my buddy that sponsors this podcast, Nathan Kaufman with CZ Welding and Custom Doll Boxes over in Virginia. But he's supposed to get her on the 23rd of this month, but if she keeps hanging around here, my wife has got her underneath her arm pretty regular. So I don't know that I'm going to have to end up buying that dog from my buddy Nathan there. But yeah, they're both brindle color. One's darker, the female's darker, and her name is actually Little Bit. That's what we're calling her. And the male dog is that lighter brindle color like that, and he's kind of got some different color, not a blue or a glass eye, but it's I don't know, his eyes are just like a different pupil color, and then when the sun hits him just right, he's kind of got this bluish gray haze over that brindle. It's kind of cool looking. It's kind of hard to describe, but yeah, I was scrolling through here and I seen this and I thought, well, I am fixing to totally derail a coon hunting podcast, and all I can say is Tree Talking Media with Ben Sheets, he's partly to blame, and Cody Moreland and Chris Knight with the Hunting Dog Public is the other part to blame. I've been listening to their podcast, and they're great guys. I've talked to them all, and they kind of got me fired up about squirrel dogs. I always wanted a squirrel dog, one that maybe would tree squirrels in the day and coon at night, or just squirrels. But
that's what the 2020 Hummer dogs, that's what they were bred for, is the coon at night and squirrel in the day. And a lot of them are semi-silent at night, but when they get up on the tree, they tree like they're supposed to. So it's a good mix.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I'm excited about it. He's a little bitty fella. He's like 9 or 10 weeks old. So he's he's a little fella. I take him, I have a landscape company, and if I'm going to be kind of in and out of the truck all day, he's with me every day, all day, in the truck, going with me. So, I mow some parks. I'm waiting for a squirrel to break out across one of them parks, and I'm going to sick him on them.
That's right.
All right. Well, I can't believe it. We have been at it right at an hour. My timer's at 59 minutes and 45 seconds.
Well, I told you I was long-winded.
Hey, that's okay. That makes for a great podcast. Do you got a story, a hunting story you can share with us, funny or serious, whether it be coon or squirrel hunting?
Off the top of my head, I really don't, but I did want to mention one person that, and I know I have, when you're talking about a lifetime of coon hunting over 45 years, there's probably 100 people I should mention, but there's one guy I haven't mentioned yet that I want to make sure that I put a shout out to, and that's Greg Hagerman from West Virginia. I got a male dog from him off of his Jake dog, and we called him his name was Carbide. We let it stay, and that Carbide dog was one of the nicest dogs I have ever seen, whether I owned it or somebody else owned it. And he was one of these rare dogs that he reproduced better than he was, and he was phenomenal. He was just everything rolled up into one. You'll see him on one of those pictures there. His name is Carbide, and he and Solid Rock were about the same age. And for the last 10 years, that's pretty much been the cornerstone of this kennel. And when they were younger, I used to hunt them together, and just about got both of them killed on the highway one night. And I got to the point where I felt like they were worth too much to get them killed like that. So I backed off of hunting them and started hunting the puppies. And that turned out to be a good thing, because I was able to show people early on, while they were still young, what kind of dogs they were reproducing. And each one of them had their own following. We had a Solid Rock club, and then we had a Carbide club. And as I said, Greg Hagerman was responsible for breeding that dog. And that you look at how Greg and his dad bred dogs all these years, it just makes a lot of sense. He had a lot of the hammer dogs, Dave Dean's hammer in there, and he's just another one of these breeders that you don't hear enough about. And I just wanted to make sure I had a shout out to him. And I guess I could leave you with that.
Yeah, well, I found him on here, and yeah, he's a good looking hound for sure. And I'll leave a link in the show notes below to your website. It's blackjackbluetick.com. If anybody wants to go over and take a look at the hounds and the squirrel dogs, but I'll leave a link in the show notes. If you just scroll down, click on the show notes, there'll be a link in there to go straight to Mr. James's website there, and you can kind of go through and look at the hounds, and I think even your contact info's on there if anybody's interested in talking dogs with you, or maybe looking for a blue dog, or do you got any more squirrel dogs, or did the guy wipe you out?
He wiped me out.
Okay, well, you ain't going to get any more squirrel dogs, so.
Well, let's don't put it that way.
Okay.
Let's just say I'm going to be even pickier the next time.
Yeah, well.
Yeah, I learn something every time I go through some dogs.
Yeah, well, I understand that. Well, Mr. James, if you ain't got anything else, I appreciate you taking your time this afternoon to be on the podcast with me. I think it was great, and a lot of history there with some blue dogs that I didn't really know a lot about, and I think people get some information there that they didn't have previously, and I really appreciate you taking your time to be on the podcast.
Well, I appreciate you calling me, and if there's anything else I can do for you, you let me know.
Okay, will do. Thank you again, and have a good night.
All right, bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks, guys, for listening to the Coonhound Collective podcast today. We really appreciate you taking your time out of your day to listen to the podcast. If you don't mind, head over to Facebook and give us a like, and head over to Instagram and give us a follow. It's both at the Coonhound Collective. Also, if you would like to reach us here at the Coonhound Collective, you can reach us at thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. If there's someone that you would like to hear on the podcast or a product that you would like to hear talked about, please send it to thecoonhoundcollective@gmail.com. Thanks again. Have a great day.